Okay, guys, we're going to call this meeting to order. Roll call. Ready. Good. Approval of the minutes for December 13th.
Move for approval. Second one.
Wait, I got it. Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion?
No, yeah. Just,
Go ahead.
well, it's just a typo, but it's under the motion committee, remember Jones, seconded by Chairman, committee Chairman Rain.
Oops, where's that
Right,
at?
and I was just getting ready to pick that up.
Where's that at?
It's on the first page.
I'm just,
I think I second the motion and you had.
And you put him down as chair.
But it said committee man further down, just a typo.
this is the typo, absolutely.
Oh, I see it. Okay. It should
That was the
be.
only thing I had. Yeah.
I heard the thunder and then I said, no, I'm not this early.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor? Okay, we're going to open this meeting up,
Mr. Chairman,
but I'd like, yes.
could we talk about the agenda for 1 second? Or can we do that later?
Well, we can, but I'd like to open up something.
Sure.
I'd like to open up something prior to this meeting. It's been brought to my attention multiple times, multiple citizens in this town, that I am in cahoots with Dewey Destin. And that, well, I want this out before this comes up in this meeting. I've been told that he also has helped me purchase Buck Smokehouse. He's involved in multiple businesses of mine. For the record, he's never given me a dime. I'm self-made, I did it myself. And in the current issue between the city, and I think it's called BI, but I'm going to use the address 202, I am not a partner. I have nothing to do with that business. So therefore, I'm being told that I shouldn't speak tonight. I can't vote tonight. I can't anything because I'm in cahoots with Dewey Destin. I'm here to say that I am going to speak tonight. I am going to vote if needed because I am not in business with Dewey Destin at 202. I have recently been able to be a partner in 200, which has nothing to do with any lawsuits with the city of Destin. I'm sorry?
I apologize,
No,
Chairman.
please do.
200 Harbor LLC is part of the litigation.
200 LLC is not part of litigation. One of the owners of 200 LLC that actually owns the real estate next door is, but 200 LLC isn't. If it is, I'm not being told. So are you telling me it is?
There's parts of the litigation that I'm not sure, because I'm not an attorney, of whether I'm at liberty to speak about. But 200 Harbor LLC is mentioned in public record documents that have been filed with the county clerk's office.
Mentioned or involved in the law? Yes, sir.
I was just gonna ask, is there a way you can comment to elaborate on, I mean, is that because it's mentioned or it's in the discovery of a lawsuit that he's not, that because he's apparently a partner on that property, he has to recluse himself?
I absolutely cannot answer that question. I am not an attorney, and I can't make a definitive opinion on whether or not the chairman should be recusing himself. I just know that there's public documents that have been filed that mention 200 Harbor LLC.
Well, myself being one of the members, is not involved in it. I spoke with 2 attorneys on the way here, or this afternoon, to get their opinion, 2 of my attorneys, and they said, absolutely no part of it. Feel free to speak. So I just want for the record to people to understand that Dewey Destin is a friend of mine, just like many of you sitting out here in this audience. I've known you all for many years. And just because he's my friend has nothing to do with Buck Smokehouse, has nothing to do, I have nothing to do with 202, and I have nothing to do with anything other than 200 with Dewey Destin. Okay? Do you have that down, please, Kim? Thank you. All right, so we'll move forward. All right. Old business. We're here to discuss the Heritage Park, the 90% set of plans. Steve?
Yeah, this came before council Tuesday night, last Tuesday night, and we were instructed to bring it before you guys. David, asked David to do the same presentation that he did for the city council. I think there's a couple other items that are included, and the presentation that went to the council, everything that was presented then to them in paper is in front of you now. It's the top sheet. So, and then I think you've also got a couple other items there that the presentation that you're about to see is based on the top sheet. Without any further ado,
Thank you, Steve. What I thought I'd start off with is a little history on the current set of plans, and we're calling them the 90% set of plans. In October 7th, 2013, minutes from the CRA board meeting, as the CRA executive director noted that the CRA board approved a motion at their June 3rd, 2013 meeting to utilize the city's professional services provider, Tetra Tech, and to use funds budgeted for the interim park improvements to proceed with task items 1, 2, and up to 50% of task item 8 of work order number 28 to complete a schematic concept update for the Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park and Plaza. Since then, Tetra Tech has reviewed the requirements of the grant, which provided the funding for the park, and met individually with policymakers and stakeholders seeking input in an effort to reach a consensus on the plan. They then created a conceptual plan and profile views of the park, brought it before the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee, who then voted unanimously to recommend approval of the plan at their September 11, 2013 meeting. She also stated that the conceptual design reflects a significant cost reduction compared to the previous conceptual design that was approved by the CRA board, estimated to range from approximately $1 million to $1.3 million. She added that the remaining scope of work to provide complete design plans for the scaled-down project would cost approximately $123,900. And that's where Tetra Tech, after that motion, Tetra Tech was awarded the contract to continue with the construction drawings. This is what was presented in 2013, which is essentially the same plan that we have today, which is a meandering pathway down to the harbor with a viewing structure and bathrooms. And this was the view from US Highway 98 and the view from the harbor showing the structure and the viewing platform. The bullet points that were given in 2013 to the CRA.
Excuse me, David.
Yeah.
Do you mind going back one page just for a
Sure.
second?
Thank you. Sure. And if you have any questions along the way, just jump in. Again, these are the bullet points that were presented by Tetra Tech to the CRA and the CRA Advisory Committee. One of the goals is to enhance the image of the park, to clean up the park and give it a better image than what it has. Another goal is to create a window to the harbor to to create a connection from Harbor Boulevard down to the harbor itself. There is a grant associated with the park with a series of guidelines and checklists that have to be met as part of the grant. They have to make sure the design will achieve all these requirements. They will consider a lot of the history of Destin as well as history tied specifically to this parcel. There are very large oak trees that exist on the parcel as well as adjacent parcels. They will make sure to take all the necessary steps to preserve these trees. They will make sure what they are doing today will provide the opportunity to be expanded in the future if the city so desires. In the 2009 plan, they created the long sweeping walkway that allows them to change the grade of access to the park, making it much easier to connect down to the water. One element of the design is to create a 13 to 15 foot wide walkway with an elevation a little less than 5%. It allows people to walk easily back and forth from the harbor and Harbor Boulevard. The design provides opportunities for seating areas. The design incorporates signage, an element required as part of the grant. It creates an opportunity for some kind of icons or boundary markers to the site. They also see this as a component to the grant that talks about time to the fishing museum. They have met with the fishing museum and discussed a series of opportunities for the museum and the park to coexist. They would bring elements from within the museum, historical facts and figures, or duplicate relics into the park. The center point of the park is where the walkways begin to transition into two different directions. There would be an opportunity for a stage that would serve to conceal the restroom facilities down below, which is another component of the grant. There would be interactive water features. That is a future component of this park, but not part of this phase. They would make sure the plan would accommodate it. There would be a legacy wall that could be inclusive of several different items, record fish caught in the area that could be sandblasted into the wall, and some heritage elements or items from the fishing museum. This has an opportunity to celebrate some of the legacy and history that is important to be integrated into the park. So that was what was presented and approved to the board and to the committee in 2013, which allowed the current plan to move forward. And so right now I'll give the presentation, and I'll try to be brief. I know a lot of you saw this the other night, but this is what I presented to council. This is just a rendering of what the park entrance may look like when it's complete. Put this in a slide so it's a little bigger. Again, this is from 2013, from the concept drawings. This is what Tetra Tech came up with in 16, another rendering, which is essentially what we're working with today. This is very difficult to see in this lighting, but this is the 90% plans. And you can see the contours. It's very difficult. I think we can turn that light off. You can see that a little better. Not a whole lot better. Anyway, this particular plan demonstrates the grade and the grading of the site. Going from US Highway 98 down the slope, down the pathway. The pathway splits right here and goes to the top of this viewing area. And underneath that viewing area is where the bathrooms would be. The main pathway continues down to the harbor. And the pathway is sloped to accommodate ADA and to give visibility from Highway 98 to the harbor. And another element that I failed to mention the other night was the access of emergency vehicles that would be able to go from Highway 98 down to the harbor on this pathway. This is the demolition plan and the tree removal plan. This shows that it's proposed to move 3 trees here. some palm trees here, palm trees up that are currently here, it doesn't show up on these plans, but they're there, and 3 palm trees here. And to give you a better idea of how that looks from an aerial perspective, 9, 10, and 11 are the trees to be removed, as well as 13 and 12, the palm trees. There's about a 16-inch cedar is number 9, a 12-inch oak tree is number 10, and about an 8-inch magnolia is number 11. 1, 2, and 4 are the trees to be preserved. That's a 30-inch live oak, an 18-inch live oak, and a 30-inch laurel. 6, 7, and 8 are going to require tree protection. They're very large heritage oaks that are located on the adjacent property, a 46-inch live oak, a 38-inch live oak, and a 20-inch live oak.
May I interrupt you right there?
Sure.
You said tree protection. What was your plan of tree protection for those?
And I'll get to that a little bit on down. And I've also given you a copy of the arborist report that you'll have a chance to study. Sure. This is a ground view of the trees to be removed. They're in the kind of the western middle portion of the site. This is the magnolia tree. This is the 12-inch oak, and behind it is the cedar tree. You can't see it that well in this photograph, but there's a better photograph of the cedar tree. That's to be removed. The trees on the site to be protected, 1 and 2, was a 30-inch live oak and an 18-inch live oak. And you also see another live oak here, which is on the property line between the Fleet and the park property, which will also be preserved. And this is the large laurel oak tree that's near the property line between the Fleet and our property that's to be preserved. These are the large oak trees that are on the adjacent property. This is the 46-inch oak tree and the 38-inch oak tree. And the 20-inch oak is here. That's even closer to the property. And I don't want to read all this verbatim, but the arborist, essentially to protect the trees, he wants to treat all of the root systems before construction as soon as possible. And what that does is makes more of the roots grow. So it'll make for a hardier tree before construction actually starts. If there's any excavation that needs to occur within the protection zone, then he recommends that the contractor air excavate to expose the roots. And then rather than, typically when a backhoe operator comes and digs around, he'll rip the roots. But when you air excavate to expose them, then you can saw them and actually prune the roots, which helps preserve the tree. And then he talks about post-construction monitoring to make sure that the trees remain healthy. It's a similar process to the trees that are on the adjacent property. He also points out that one particular tree on the adjacent property, we shouldn't be cutting within 4 feet of that tree. And currently the design shows that we will be very close to that, so there will have to be some adjustments made there. This is a 3-dimensional perspective of the current drawings, which gives you an idea of the grading that has to occur. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is Highway 98. You can see the slope of the main pathway down to grade, and then the slope of the pathway up to the top of the viewing platform, and underneath would be the bathrooms. This represents Dewey Destin's restaurant, and the trees that are adjacent to the property on the Dewey Destin restaurant property are located near this proposed wall. So they'll be approximately right here, and one's approximately right here.
Jacob, can I interrupt you right there?
Sure.
That's one of my questions. In the Harbor report, he states no roots larger than 3 inch in diameter shall be pruned.
That's what the,
In the vicinity that you have trees of 6, 7, and 8, which is a 46 inch, a 38, and a 20, which is on the property line. What I'm seeing on the elevations here is you're proposing to build a wall there. Well, if you build a wall there, you have no choice but to cut roots off.
and that's what I just pointed out here, that this needs to be adjusted
Okay.
to accommodate. And I think, sometime in the last, and you may know this better than I might, but there was a 12-inch water line that was built through here that which actually had to cut those roots at the time it was installed. I think it may be plausible to pull some of that wall out towards that water line where those roots have previously been disturbed, so we don't get into those areas.
The reason I'm bringing it up is it states very clearly in here, no root larger than 3 inch diameter. So whether it's the water line or whether it's 10 feet in or 10 feet there, wherever that 3 inch diameter root is where we should stop the retaining, correct?
According to the report,
Yes.
sure. I'm not an arborist, so I can't confirm.
Right, I'm just going by what's Harbor Road.
Sure. And here's another perspective looking from the harbor up towards Highway 98, which gives you a better idea of the excavation that's proposed. And in this perspective, the big laurel tree is about right here at the top of the hill. The big oak is at number 5. And then the trees on the adjacent property would be close to this wall that's shown here.
Each line is a foot, correct?
That's correct. Each line is a foot.
So tree number, and the reason I'm bringing up the trees as much as I am is because council made it very clear the other night, I think they pretty much voted 5-1 that they don't want any trees removed. And the concern is tree number 2. If you look at where tree number 2 is now, sitting on a flat land, and it sits up there where roughly 5 is, that would be on Rural Melvin Heritage Park tree removal. And tree,
Tree 2?
yes, sir.
And
Now,
one.
go on, keep going, David, look for this one here. This page.
The aerial, we,
That,
There you go. That tree number 2 appears to be sitting about, the trunk of it's a minimum of 6 feet higher than where the elevation is going to finish off at, according to the elevation lines.
right.
Correct?
I don't know, I haven't
Well, according to
studied
these-
this. I mean, it's difficult to tell from an aerial.
I get that,
Right.
but knowing elevation as well as you and I do, I can look at that and tell you number 2 is going to be an issue, the way this is designed.
From my review of the plans, one's an issue, 2's an issue, 8 and 6.
Correct.
And so when we get to these construction drawings, it needs to be addressed with the contractor
Yes, sir.
that, special care needs to be taken. And you know as well as I that plans a lot of times aren't built exactly what's shown on the drawings.
Right.
That you have to make field adjustments. So I'm with you. I think that adjustments will have to be made during construction to help protect these trees.
Right.
Mr. Campbell, I've got a
Yes.
question. So,
Okay.
the width of the pathway, excuse me, Phil.
Go to the pathway.
The width of the pathway,
Right.
maybe on one of my sheets, but I can't read
It's
it.
15 feet.
15 feet wide?
Yes.
What's the minimum width that we need for emergency vehicles?
I've spoken with the fire department about this particular site, and typically you want a 20-foot clear zone.
But that's for turnaround.
That's for turnaround, they'll accept 12.
Okay. So we have a little room to fudge one or
Right.
the other to save the tree. That's
Yes,
Can
sir.
we not do a more dramatic sway in the walkway to accommodate? I mean, if you look at the aerial, and like you said, the aerial is kind of deceiving, but I know that property intimately also. Possibly 11, the Magnolia. You know, you might get into some of that, but if you just follow the aerial and kind of swing back around and come up along the Destin, Dewey Destin restaurant property and grade out that way and like purposely swerve through the pathway to keep the trees and I saw it's kind of a dramatic elevation. It's kind of hard to visualize that, but that's a pretty steep grade coming down to the walkways, correct?
That is a steep grade. It's about a 2-to-1 from on the. Let me go to this one if I'm understanding what you're saying. This grade here, the slope is about a 2-to-1.
So,
And in order to get your ADA requirement and your vehicles, you have to start your slope at the top of the hill, which necessitates being a large cut in the middle. So you're it's a fine line there that you have to you're going deeper and you got to keep a certain width. So not impacting those 3 trees that are proposed to be removed, I can tell is extremely difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done.
well, here's what I'm saying. I'd rather the 12-inch oak and the magnolia, and I don't want the cedar either, but really have to bear that. But I would think that the 46 and the 38 would be a far more importance, and there to be a buffer zone where we try and keep these trees. And they're very slender trees, and they're not very big around the 10 and 11, 12 and 8 inch. And if a root system mimics the way the tree grows, then you should be able to get closer to that tree than you would be the 46 or the 46 inch live oak, because that tree's root system is more developed and spread out. And if we'd be able to get, did the 3-inch root, was that just for the big any tree?
Any tree.
So you'd be able to get a lot closer to the 10 and 11 than you would be the 6. Like if we can make this a more dramatic sway back down, and I know in the vision in the beginning it was to have a kind of a view, a long, elongated view of the harbor, but I think it's been proven that these trees matter to us residents more than the view. We can get the view about anywhere, and especially after we're still under, I believe, a moratorium to not remove these trees. It's just kind of, it's kind of contradictory of what the stance of the city has been so far. So I don't know if, I'm gonna let you finish your presentation, but I'd like to further discuss that.
Okay. Good. You got a question? No?
I was just gonna say, I mean, looking at those 3 trees, and I've visited the site, I went there to look at it during the week, and I'm certainly gonna say that those are sacrificial trees by my estimation, and I've been involved with trees and tree protection previously in other places. I would say this, none of these are stellar trees, which just means something that's worth saving. That cedar tree is not something, that the magnolia is not, it's 10 inches, and the oak is minimal at a preservable site. I'd much rather see us move 15 feet or do something with, as he says, with the swale, bringing that around, protect the roots to all those bigger trees that are to the west, and we've solved our problem. We've made a happier landowner next to us, and we've got something that can move forward. And I think that's, very much, and that's going to be my recommendation in the motion here when we get to this, because I've already looked at this, and that was my answer to it exactly the same. We've had no communication. We're thinking alike, and I think most of this committee would probably say the same thing. And the other thing is, I looked at it very closely for the view, and we want that vista view, and that vista view will not be over those 3 trees. That's why they were earmarked originally to be removed, and they need to be removed. So I'll leave it there.
We need to look at this before we say that. I got a question, David, as we're looking right there on that page.
Okay.
As we're looking at this, it just hit me out of the blues, the elevations. When you look at the existing picture of that project, and you see the driveway coming down where the water, that 12-inch water line is, there's not a retaining wall on that left side there. And what it appears now is that that is getting ready to get raised 8 feet up there. Are you planning on building a retaining wall in between Mr. Destin's property and the city property all the way down towards the water? Look at the,
Mike, this is a retaining wall?
no, I see that, but look at number 3. Come on down.
Right here?
Okay, all that whole area there.
Right.
Right now, that is a flat, that's a driveway, and it looks like you're, what it appears to do is you're filling that up to make it a taper.
This is about where the deck is, Mike, right here. That's where the outside deck is in this location.
So there's gonna be a retaining wall behind it then, there has to be. Because Mr. Destin's property comes down with the driveway. So what I'm getting at is they're gonna have to be behind that green, behind that number 3, there's gonna be a retaining wall built all the way down. And then when you look at this picture here on if these pictures are correct, when you look at this picture right here, David, you can see that you're building it pretty much all the way down to the bottom. On the inside of the walkway, but you don't show it on the backside, so it's gonna have to have one on the backside also.
These are tied to existing contours, Mike.
I'm sorry, sir?
This is existing contour,
It's not even.
and it's tying to existing contour. That's from the survey.
There's a parking lot right there where all those lines are showing, and that is not correct.
This slope represents what's under the deck, and the parking is about down here.
Under the deck is where the deck is. That's the deck right there.
That's right here.
Right, no, there's no deck there. The deck is there.
This is based off of.
That's the deck. So everything past that. see
Here it
the
is,
deck?
right here. There's
Right.
a wall right there now.
Yeah, no, there's no wall there now.
It looks like a wall there now.
Maybe a 12 inch sitting there, a landscape timber, but there's no wall. There's a wall on the backside.
So what that plan shows is proposed contours tying to existing contours, Mike. That shows these are existing contours from the survey.
I understand that,
And
but
this
what
is
I'm trying to
proposed.
say is the survey's wrong, that those contours are not correct. Because those contours right there is his parking lot, and it's flat.
Okay.
You can see that.
We'll pull the plans out
Okay, perfect.
and I'll show you. So I was here. This is a view looking from Harbor up towards the road, and this is a rendering of what it would look like complete. Yes, sir.
Is that on the rendering, the very southern, that door right there, that green door,
This.
is that gonna be where the bulkhead is as of right now?
No,
Okay.
this is way waterward of that bulkhead.
What is
This bulkhead you're looking at here, and again, it's really difficult to show on this projection, that building will come out to about right here.
Okay, so it's gonna come forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is the floor plan of what's going to be in the building. This is the resource room that'll be utilized by the museum, and these are the bathrooms. Okay. The City Council motion on January 2nd, 2018, send the Heritage Park 90% plans to Harbor CRAC Advisory Committee for their review and recommendations relating to the following issues. And one is the parking spaces that are requirement that's on site. 2 of the restrooms, they wanted to look at moving them to the top of the hill and get rid of the lift station. They wanted to look at an alternate method to comply with ADA. They wanted to look at maintaining more of the bluff. One was move the path further away from the west boundary and adjust the pathway so the magnolia, oak, and cedar trees are not removed. That was in the conversation between the council members on January 2nd. City manager verified those bullet points in that meeting. So that's what was discussed.
Real simple, save trees, remove bathrooms up high, and protect the bluff.
Right. So moving forward, these are the things that we know. We paid $4.6 million for that property. The Florida Communities Trust reimbursed the city 50% in the form of a grant. They reimbursed the city $2.3 million. We know that the city needs to honor the grant by developing the park in accordance with the Florida Communities Trust restrictive covenants. The Florida Communities Trust has approved the current plan. The city received approval of a Restore Act grant in the amount of $1.25 million based on the current plan. To date, the city has spent $216,561 on plan development. City Council desires the CRA Advisory Committee look at the current plan for possible redesign based on the aforementioned recommendations. And we know that the current land development code requires 3 parking spaces on site. And these plans, none of these plans show parking on the site. Things we don't know. We don't know any implications a change in design will have on the $2.3 million Florida Communities Trust grant and the restrictive covenants. We don't know if there are any implications a change in design will have on the $1.25 million Restore Act grant. And we don't know the time frame in which any changes can be incorporated into the plan by the design firm or the costs associated therewith. So staff will research these issues and present our findings at the next CRA Advisory Committee. And that concludes my presentation. So please,
We have a few
I'll try to answer your questions as best I can.
And if it's all right, I'm gonna start down from the left, Jim, and let, do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a few, because I don't feel like we can make any kind of until you get back to us, I don't feel like we can make any kind of an educated decision here. But there's some things in here that I know because of the business that I'm in, that I'd like the answers to the questions. And one of them is, we used to park our boat in one of those slips there. So I'm wondering, first of all, what happened to the 15 parking places that came with the property? Where did they get moved to? What was the negotiated deal on the city's part for those 15 parking places? Where are they?
Steve, can you answer that?
Yeah, he's trying.
This was actually just a little bit before my time.
Well,
Yeah,
can we
we're gonna
bring the answer
research
back
it,
at the next minute?
But I do know this. I mean, there was.
At the time of the sale, there were 15 places.
When we bought the property and we're getting the grant, there was a provision in the grant that we could not have any private purpose use on that lot. And I know that was a fact, and that had something to do with the apparent swap of boat slips and parking spaces, and so
Well, that's my next question, because we parked our boat there, and I'd like to know who has the riparian rights now.
We'll have to research that.
All right.
My understanding is that the riparian rights were actually given away by an owner before we acquired it. I know that as part of the process to satisfy the FCT with respect to the parking, we converted. There's 3 slips down there now that we retained, and they were made as transient slips because transient slips didn't require any parking. So that was one of the ways that there's some of the parking was limited.
I know a sign is
Beyond that,
built there
we
to
have
that.
to do more
Yeah.
research.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know the answer to those, because, I mean, that's curious to me. The city would negotiate a deal where we lost parking and we lost riparian rights.
I don't believe we never had the return.
Okay, if we didn't, we didn't have
acquired
it,
the
but
property.
I'd just like to know the answer to the question before I know which way
In
I.
order to give you any detail on that, we'll have to do
Gotcha.
some more research.
That's it for me.
Yeah.
I need answers to the other stuff before my questions are over. Sorry.
I certainly like to make a couple comments. One is, as I said earlier, I think preservation of the not stellar, but archival heritage oak trees that are on the adjoining property are first order concern. And the fact that we're gonna have to replace that water line, moving it pretty far down, means that there's a conflict there, and I would like to see what happens and how the plan proceeds with that. And I would even say, you can move it, you can move that line if you had to further to the center of that area. And the third thing I was gonna say, I still think those 3 trees that the council thought would be worth saving or not worth saving, you for about $25,000 or $30,000 can replace. You can buy trees and plant them in place and put them exactly where you want for a fraction of the heartache, headache, and concern about non-stellar trees. That's it.
Jim?
I wanted to ask, of these covenants, I've heard something about, I can't remember when it was or who it was, but that we were supposed to use native, like we weren't supposed to put palm trees and stuff. It would have to be something native to this area. Is that correct? Is that something we have to do?
I've got a copy of the covenants here. I don't recall seeing that in there, but I'll get an answer for you.
Yeah, because if, and that's going to be one of my questions, if that was correct, which I think it is correct, can you go back to the existing plan up there where you showed the 3 trees that goes to water? I think just go back up.
Like the demolition plan?
No, keep going. Right there. No,
Here.
One more
Oh,
back.
you see these palm trees?
Yeah, one more back. You can look at just that same view from the, yeah, one from the radio. All right. One of the concerns, what we're trying to do as a whole here, as all of us are trying to do, is make this when you're either driving by at 45 miles an hour, or you're on a bicycle, or whatever you are doing, or you're walking, is to be able to see the water. Well, when you look at what's being presented to us versus what we already have, you can see the water there. And what you see here, you can't see the water. You can only see just a spot of it right here compared to what you can see there. And the reason that there's a couple things I want to touch on here, David, is the amount of landscaping that we're showing, a wall full of landscaping here. You're losing everything from 6 foot down. You've lost it all. Number one. Number two, I thought what we were trying to do here was make this harbor more of a festive area. Make it where, we have the festivals down there. And it was my understanding we're gonna, build a platform up there where we could put the bands and, we had places down where we could pull the vehicles or the trucks or whatever, just like we do on everybody's private property. And then when you look at these, David, when you look at this, for example, you're taking the landscaping 6 feet tall, all the way down to the boardwalk on both sides. So there's no way to use any of this land down here and or tie it into the fishing fleet and or to Dewey Destin's side by side and make everything flow. There's no way of doing it. That's one look. When you look at the other one here, I don't have these in series. When you look at this one, when you're looking at this one, David, they're bringing the landscaping all the way down to the boardwalk. And then, I guess my question is if you're gonna build a bandstand or a pavilion or whatever you may wanna call it up on the top to set the bands up to be playing, at least that's what I thought we were doing here, guys. I thought this was to make it more of a festive area. Well, when you look at what you've got, you put the cover for the bandstand on the right-hand side. I would think this would be sitting over top of this to protect whatever we have out there on a festive day. But everything is coming all the way down to the water. It's almost like it's a 6 foot privacy fence that's going down the water, and we don't want to play with the neighbors. I thought we were opening this up so we can make it more of a festive area. That's what I thought we were doing. But according to this, according to the elevations of this, we're shutting it all off. And when you look at the view that I asked you just a second ago, how much water you really can see, compared to what the finished product is, you really can't see any water on this picture. I mean, I don't know how many people have seen that, but you really can't see any water there.
One comment, I've never been very much a fan of architectural renderings or drawings because they do not really give you true concept.
It's just,
I mean, I'm sorry.
it's not a photograph, it's just.
I just can't, I can't live with these as a presentation. But that's me.
And I will tell you this about these renderings, these are preliminary. I was asked, to be judicious with who views these, because they are preliminary, and obviously the artist wants to be accurate. So, this was saying to
With all due
be.
respect, David.
Can I answer each one of those questions?
Oh, yes, sir.
In line here. We talked about the view corridor. We're starting to grade down from the roadway at a constant grade. So by nature of grading, we're opening up view. The second issue was down here at the bottom of the hill. So I can get a good photograph, or not photograph, rendering. That you had mentioned you thought we were going to be connecting to the adjacent properties. I think the goal here, and it's actually stated in the our comprehensive plan, that we're to try to do our best to eliminate conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles in all of our parks. So I think that was the reason that was shut off like that, Mike. And this structure here is a shade structure for folks to sit. I think on the set of plans, the 60% did show a shade structure up here, and it could still be there. It just doesn't show up in this rendering. But I mean, I get your point. There probably should be a shade structure up there.
Please understand, David, man, I think the world of you, you know I do, and I have the utmost respect for you. But these are the questions that we have been asking for the last year and a half. And it's just simple little things, but all we're just asking for is a little bit of either we have a little bit of input and or a little bit of why or.
Well, I think there was the circumstance kind of put this entire project on hold. There wasn't a whole lot of activity on this project for the last 2 years. I can recall being directed to stop work, okay, because we did not know if this project was actually going to move forward, so we just stopped.
Right.
So that's probably why for the last year and a half you haven't, heard anything. I think in last year we heard, we got notified that we qualified for the construction grant, and I believe Lindy heard from the folks at the Florida Community Trust. Now we've got a construction grant, and the Florida Community Trust is wondering what's going on.
Right.
Then we picked it back up and we started moving forward.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what happened.
If you don't mind, back up a page or two. This is one of the questions that a lot of the council members had. Keep right there.
Right there?
Go back one more, David.
Okay.
Shows on the front. Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
You see the elevations that you're taking, and I say you, I don't mean you. You're taking that bluff out all the way down throughout there. Instead of it looking like this to the water and looking down to the water and making the sidewalk get down and keep the existing trees and, what have you, you're just taking, take that back. Not you. You're doing this to it. You're doing this to the property all the way down. Why? Why not keep it up? We can still see the water. Why are we doing this?
At the very beginning of the presentation, I think that Tetra Tech was given a directive based on their interviews and with stakeholders and council members and whatnot, that not only did we want to have a view corridor, that there needed to be ADA access, which you know how that works, and to be able to get emergency vehicles down there because this is a gathering place. And so in order to meet that criteria, that's what they came up with. I mean, it's not to say, you know as well as I do, it's not the only way to skin a cat.
Right.
Right? So,
Exactly.
could there be changes to this? Could there be some minor tweaks to this that they could look into? Absolutely. Could it be redesigned totally? Yes. So I'm trying to present to you the facts as best I know them, and why things were done to this point.
What I think we'd like to see is not as much of the bluff taken out like that. And instead of this, more like this, more slope it down. Instead of this, save all the trees if we can save them. I agree with the doc, is to see is it mandatory to keep it? No, but it is a native tree. So if there's a way that we can go around all the trees, not move the water line, put the bathrooms on the top, not have to put $150,000 station at the bottom of the hill, there's gonna be maintenance. There's a lot of things can be solved pretty simple and very inexpensive. This is what I'm hearing from the meeting the other night. Save the trees, don't take the bluff out.
And based on the recommendation here, let us come back with any implications that there may be for any major redesign or, to these grants that we have. If it's even feasible to do a major redesign. And I will tell you, if to do some of the things that you're talking about is a major redesign. When you're talking about moving the pathways and reconfiguring everything out there, it's not tweaking a set of plans, it's almost starting over. So if that's the decision, then we certainly can come back to you with a time frame and a cost to do all that.
I think some of the concerns is and you've heard it, and I feel very comfortable from listening to what the council had spoke the other night. Save all trees, don't take the bluff out, put the bathrooms up on the top, and try to keep it as simple in what we have, what we have to work with, without going to this radical expense of something that we gotta maintain. David, you know as well as I do, we have a hard enough time trying to maintain what we have out there now. And here we're gonna throw something else. We can't lock those bathrooms 24/7. They gotta stay open.
We have automatic locks on all of our beach bathrooms, so we can put automatic locks on there.
Any other questions? You guys have questions?
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I'm all with this bathroom the way it is. Lift station is.
Can you speak up?
I deal with a lift station in my restaurant. There's a lift station parallel to that property right now down there.
Where?
On Fleet.
I put most of those in there. The fleet's just sitting up at that elevation, probably an 8. And if I had to guess, at least maybe a 9. Where we're talking about is dead bottom.
Yeah, you're looking at 5 down there,
Dead bottom.
the finished floor.
Dead bottom.
How does the water from the booking booths get uphill?
Oh, you're talking residential, poly tank. Same thing you're using is a poly tank. You're talking $150,000, $200,000 lift station, what they're talking about putting here. I've done thousands of them, that's what I do for a living.
We're already $2.5 million into this project.
I'm sorry?
I said, we're already $2.5 million into this project.
I get it. I do get it.
Another $200,000 to change the plans or put a $150,000 lift station in.
Well, wait a minute, I don't think so.
Hold on, first off, the plans are gonna change anyway, if we're talking about protecting 8, 7, and 6, because that wall, like David said, things are gonna change. I want, so you're saying you're gonna come back with that at our next meeting, with the implications that it could possibly have.
I am.
Which is the most important thing, I think, right now. We
Yeah,
can't really do
no, I
anything
hear
until we
that.
hear that.
Totally agree.
But
And I understand your concern, but all the basic work has been done. These are just renderings, like he said. You're not talking about redoing this project, because
No.
they've been on site, they've done all their shootings, they've done everything they need to do.
It's CAD work.
Exactly, it's just,
It's CAD.
it's CAD work. So, I mean, we're not looking at another $200,000 to change it, tweak it.
No.
Well, and then.
Then we gotta get it, then we need a different architect, different engineer.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I just think it's really important, I think that there's room to, I think there's room to keep the bluff, to make a more dramatic sway in the walkway. I think, the retention wall that would be around 9, 10, and 11, or somewhere in that area would be another opportunity for us to push things in it or put more information. I think, if you swerve it, you'd be able, there's places where there isn't trees where you can take the grade out and not have to have a retention wall.
I agree.
And I think it's just some simple tweaks, and I'm not trying to mitigate what you're saying, David, about a massive redesign. But, if we can move the bathrooms and save that money that we would spend on a lift station and redesign it to where it's more conducive to the citizens and the leaders of this town, then I think it needs to be looked at. But we definitely need to save as many of the big trees as we can. If we have to sacrifice any, they should be less than, 12 inches. Because like Doc said, we have to sacrifice them, we can plant more, but there's a way of saving them.
Yes, ma'am.
and just a final statement, I just want to thank you for coming. I
Yes.
really appreciate it. We've been asking for over a year for this, and I really, really appreciate
Steve,
it.
it is true.
And Steve, I thank you for, it just has seemed like there was a shroud of secrecy over this whole project, and it hasn't felt good as one of the stakeholders, as somebody who is in business, who has been in business for almost 20 years on Harbor Boulevard, that I'm sitting on a committee and I can't even find out information from the staff. So I really thank you, and I thank Steve, I thank you for being here, and I really appreciate it.
I do thank you all. Thank you. Anybody from the audience want to speak regarding this before we move forward?
Just a brief comment, Chairman. Here are some
State the name.
Dewey Decimal. No, Mike.
Oh,
State your name again.
I'll do them so.
Dewey Destin, 777 Spring Lake Drive. I've got some reports from an arborist who looked at our trees and makes some recommendations. I've given these to the staff previously, I didn't know if y'all had seen them. I'll give one for the record over here.
Need one more?
One more?
That's right. We're good.
And I appreciate the fact that y'all are trying to figure out how to not impact those trees on our property. And you're doing the right thing there. But as you'll see in this report, the trimming of the trunks and the roots, while they are important, and we will be doing some pretty dramatic cutting of them, that's not the only real issue. As the gentleman in that report states, we're changing the hydraulic profile and nature of the entire area down there, our lot, the city's lot, by digging down the 12 feet, putting drainage systems down there. The water that would have perked down to nourish those roots is now going to go straight down to a drainage basin 12 feet down. And so that may be a problem that will affect the long-term health of the trees even more than cutting the roots off. So, our suggestion is try to address that issue. If it means modifying the deep cut, then that would be something that we would certainly support. And if you can preserve those other trees, that would be great too. What we didn't address tonight, which is a rather looming issue, which is parking. Staff said that they believe the requirements 3 parking spaces, and
I'm not sure that's correct, but I know that may be a requirement that they would support as being correct. But the real story is, that's not enough parking. The Leonard Destin Park down on Calhoun, which is also subject to grants, in its present plan, the plan that's on the board out in front of it has 21 parking spaces. We need more parking down there at this park because we don't have enough parking in the area now. And so what's going to happen is the people that want to use this parking, and this is not a neighborhood park, this is a park that services the entire almost mile length of the Harbor Walk. So this is the main entrance, and this is where people are going to go. So at the very minimum, we need to put in some ADA parking. We need more parking. I don't know how we can get it, but you can't put the ADA parking across the street and have people coming across, as Councilman Marver said the other day, in their walkers or their wheelchairs. We need to have some ADA parking down there. And my suggestion is that the two adjoining property owners get together, have a meeting with the city, and see what we can do. You know, we'll be happy to provide some ADA parking. We have offered in the past to put an ADA boat ramp so people can get off and on boats on the city property down at the site. One of the requirements in the grant was that a kayak launch ramp be installed on the park site. We don't have any parking for that. I don't see it on the plan. I know the plans, I think, have only been really 60% approved so far, so we've got to figure out where that ramp's going to be and how you can load your kayaks off and on to that, because in the grant it says that the kayak launch area will be part of a statewide kayak course that goes from Pensacola all the way to Apalachicola. So that's yet to be addressed. There are a whole lot of issues that I think the property owners on either side would be willing to work with the city to make this the kind of park that we're all proud of. In fact, when you put in the construction money and what we paid for the park, we're around $7 million. The most expensive, if not one of the most expensive public works projects that the city of Destin has ever done. Let's do it right. Let's put some parking in that will be adequate, at least for the disabled people. And let's figure out how we can enhance this park and make it something we're all proud of. And I'll end on that note.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is the best question, if you want to do it.
You will have to say your name, though, please.
Mary Ann Lyons, 787 Spring Lake Drive. We're also with the Destin Fishing Fleet. Ms. Bess, you asked about the parking and the riparian lines down there. It's going to take me a few minutes to go through the history, but if you've got a minute, I'm happy to give that to you if that's important to you.
It's very important to me.
Okay. Well, back in the very early 1990s, a landowner, most of the charter boats were down there at what was called the Kelly Docks. And the Kelly Docks came under the control of a developer that had recently come to the area, who at the time, their vision has changed since then, but at the time they were not enamored with the charter boats. They called them boat people, and they wanted the charter boats removed from the city of Destin. They felt like the Destin Harbor should be a place for yachts. And so it looked as if the Destin fishing fleet was going to get displaced. So we had an organization called the Destin Fishermen's Cooperative, and it was a little place down there at the Kelly Docks where we bought fuel at cost. And there was about 100 fishing families that were all a member of this cooperative. And the first thing this landowner did was pull the lease on that and shut it down. And they took over the fuel and raised the prices significantly, almost putting the charter boats out of business. They also had the leases to the Destin Fishing Museum, which was also pulled, and the Destin Fishing Museum was put out of business. So the downtown Fort Walton merchants called the fishermen over to Fort Walton and said, hey, we've got this place down here, Leolio's. Would y'all like to why don't you move the Destin fishing fleet over to Fort Walton and beef up our downtown Fort Walton area? And the fishermen, being an independent group, said, no, we don't want to do that. So the first thing we did was we put, where Gilligan's is, we put that under contract, and we tried to save the co-op. Then it became clear that we were going to lose a whole bunch of fishing boats at the Kelly docks, and we were scared of that. So we let the Gilligan's parcel go, and we found a bigger parcel, 3.17 acres, which is now the Destin Fishing Fleet, owned by the Destin Fishing Fleet Marina, which is owned by Destin Fishing Fleet, Inc. That 282 feet could save quite a few boats. Well, Royal Melvin owned the parcel next door. Royal Melvin was a fisherman. He and I were on the rodeo board together. And Royal didn't have money to put into the project because we put second mortgages on our homes and on our boats. I mean, in order to do this project, it was way bigger than any of us were. I had to borrow money to buy diapers for my kids. I mean, we were not wealthy people. And so Royal Melvin said, if I were to put my 68 feet in, could we be a part of it? And we looked at it, and Royal was able to fit 3 boats behind his, and he had no access. It was undeveloped. So the Destin Fishing Fleet and Royal made an agreement, a 99-year riparian lease agreement, and Royal gave up his riparian land rights to his parcel, which is now the City of Destin parcel, for 99 years. In exchange for that, he upgraded from where he was able to have 3 boats, he was able to have 6 charter boats and derive the rents from that. Those 6 charter boats required 5 parking places each, which was 30 spaces. He didn't have enough room for that. So he said, if you will develop my down below, do the stormwater, the paving, the excavating, if you'll build the marina, if you'll move the Dickstone Channel, if you'll build the dock and do all the permitting, which was about $150,000 just to permit the dock. If you'll do all that, I'll throw in my 68 feet. Win-win for him because he got 6 rents from 6 charter boat slips, nice big 18-foot wide big charter boat slips. And we got to build an entire western dock and reconfigure it where we were able to save 40 boats. So that was win-win for everybody, and that's what we did. And Royal and the fleet also had the right of first refusal on that parcel. And so we worked with Royal for many, many years. And when this parcel came up to the Destin City Council to vote, first they had to come to the trust, the Community Land Trust. They came to the fleet and said, we know you have the right of first refusal, because Kelly Wines and Dewey were both on the city council at the time. And Kelly quickly disclosed, we have a 99-year lease agreement on that parcel. We have the riparian rights. You have the rights to the income from 6 boat slips. And we have 15 parking places. And we call it fleet parking on the city property. And the reason is because we didn't really say, whoever parks in this has to be in Royal Melvin slips, and if all 6 of Royals was on the fleet, that was okay. We worked together. It was a partnership. So 15 of Royal / the city's parking places were on the fleet. 15 were on the city's parking, and the fleet built the boardwalk, and the fleet developed it and put in the stormwater and did all that. Then in 2010. It began to get the covenants from the Florida Community Trust began to become problematic. And so the City of Destin came to the fleet and said, the Community Land Trust does not allow anything for a private purpose to be on the city park. Your parking needs to be removed. So first they said, we will give you parking across the street at a to be built, because at that time I don't think the parking across the street was built, but it's going to be built, and you're going to have parking across the street. And we were about to do a development, and we considered that, but that didn't work out. So, and we worked with them as far as putting the fishing museum on our site and doing all sorts of things with the development that we had planned, but that got postponed, and the market fell, and so we didn't do that. So they came to us and they said, look, here's what we'd like to do. We'll give you 3 of the boat slips, 3 of the 6 boat slips, because you're parking them anyways. If you will take these 15 boat slips off of the city park. I mean, not boat slips, if you take these 15 parking spaces off of the city park. And so we didn't want to do that. We said, we've got a deal. You knew that when you bought the property. This is not what we want to do. We're just going to stand our ground, and we're going to stick with what we got. And so the city went back to the Florida Community Trust, and they came back to us and they said, look, it's going to cost us the $2.4 million or however much that the Community Land Trust had put in. It's going to cost us this grant if the fleet doesn't work with us. And we really did not want to do it, but we did. And so we made an agreement. The city was going to expedite doing the bathrooms. The city was going to expedite doing the park. But things happen, and unexpected things happen, and lawsuits happen. And so the park got shut down, and it didn't move forward for 7 years. And although our agreement with the city that got amended, we're being patient, and we're just waiting. But those 15 parking places went away because 3 of the boat slips the income from those slips go to the fleet, and we kept them charter boat slips. And the other three slips were made into transient slips, so the city still has those, and the city could still put charter boats back in them because we had charter boat leases, and they're on all 6 slips up until 2010, and we had charter boats in those slips. But right now they're transient slips, and so that's what the city decided to do so that they would have no parking. Do you have any other questions?
No, so what you're saying to me is that in 2010, you made an agreement with the city of Destin.
We amended our 99-year lease agreement that we had with Royal Melvin. We amended it in order that the city would be able to get the $2.4 million for the park.
Okay.
We felt like we felt like we didn't have a choice. I mean, we had a choice. We could have said, we got a deal's a deal, Camille. You know, be on down and forget the park. But we didn't. We had already given up our right of first refusal on that land so that the city could have the park. And we were trying to be, team players, community partners. And we've always worked well with the city. All the events that the city had, we've always provided the parking. There's a lot of things that we've tried to do. The blessing of the fleet and the rodeo.
A good partnership.
Yeah.
And well, anyway, do you have any plans to expand that area, the docks?
The marina?
The marina?
No, ma'am.
I'm just curious.
No, ma'am. We're the city still has three boat slips down there, and we're concerned about those because of some boats that are blocking those. But we're in battle with that right now.
Well, I appreciate you answering my question. Thank you so much.
The parking then, is that why the parking on 2013, it shows the 6 or 7 parking spots on the fleet property for the park? Is that part of that issue? When you removed the 15, no, I missed you. I missed the part where you moved the 15 off the Heritage Park. But looks like you moved part of them on your property for the, that's not it, that's not it.
No, if you look at where, if just by eyeballing, you have to look at a survey. Those new 7 spots that have been, that we've recovered, that's actually on the fleet property. That's not on the city property. And the way the bluff is and the way it's built, it does look like it sort of is, but if you actually go and you run a sight line and you look up and you see where the block is.
This one right here? Yeah. This one here?
Yes. Yeah, see how that goes straight along the line?
Right.
That's not on the city, that's on the fleet property.
That's your property?
That's our property.
Okay, but my question is when we brought up the parking, my question is it shows on the,
Mike, I got it up here.
you got it?
Yeah.
See, on the demo permit, on the demo
Let me blow this up.
version, it shows that parking. So I thought that's what you were talking about.
Here's the, we're down here at the harbor. You can lightly see the existing parking that's there now. You know that island with the backflow, is that a backflow center right there?
I know that.
Yeah.
Yes, it is
And a fire hydrant.
Yep.
The property line between the 2 properties is right here. Okay?
Right.
So you can see that when we build the park, the fleet's got 2 parking spaces that it splits the property line. and then these 2 parking spaces. So when we build the park, they're gonna become unusable. So the
why is
ones
this
right
part of-
here will be replacing those.
Okay, so this is part of the construction of the park. That's what I'm asking, because when she just brought up the parking, see here, Mary Ann? I don't know if you can see it from here. Here.
I don't think they built anything on our property.
Well, this is part of the demolition permit. This is part of the demolition of the whole project. They're showing demolition on your property.
On our property?
I don't know if you're aware of that, but they are.
I'm not aware.
Okay, well, I'm just letting you know they,
No, honestly, I haven't seen the plans since 2010,
Right.
when we made the agreement. But the 15 spaces that were on the city property, those just went away. And then the 15 spaces that we had on our property.
is on your property.
It was already on our property, remains on our property, and we're still taking care of those.
Yeah, Mike, the parking spaces you're looking at are basically curing an issue that our construction has created. And it's just, I'm sorry, the parking that you're looking at, you're talking about is curing an issue that our construction has created. We're basically, by creating a park, we're shutting off some of their parking, and so that's just an effort to configure it.
Okay,
so that
I
we
got it,
can-
I got it.
And the demolition comes into hers because it's relocating the backflow preventer to somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what it says right there.
Gotcha.
And the relocate to,
Yeah, the reason why.
Okay,
it's
but
on the
that
property is-
backflow preventer is not the city's, that's the fleet's. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dave.
No, that's, what happens is, if we were just to leave it the way it is, they couldn't use this space right here for anything.
Right.
So we're creating a problem for the fleet.
I got you.
By building, so
I'm good with that.
this is what we propose to do to help
I got you. I'm good with that.
cure that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll tell you what, why don't we leave it, do you have another question?
Yeah, just one other thing, whenever you look into whatever we're doing, if we could make sure that we have a really good pedestrian access down below with full sight line of whole, I don't see any trees down below, I mean, other
Like
than
this.
what's existing.
or
Like
barricades.
this.
The one landscape
Just, we need to get the people.
Right. In other words, this here, David, what he's saying is just get rid of this stuff here down here at the bottom, leave it more opened up.
Yeah, and I think, all that can be presented to, the CRA board. And if the CRA board votes on that, we can certainly bring that to the design firm and, get you what you want down there. I don't see that as being.
All right, so if there's no more questions on this, we're gonna move on this?
I want a motion that we move, the one thing we can't talk about is parking.
Right.
And I wanted to make a motion that either we have on-site parking or the city works with the adjacent property owners to address more ADA on-site or relatively close instead of across the street parking.
Yeah, not either, just leave the either out.
Well, he's got a good point there.
No, I agree with him.
Yeah, he's got a good point.
Well, no,
Just
it
talking
either
about
goes on
language.
now.
It either goes on the city's property and or work with both property owners and see if you can work it out that way.
To cure more.
To
Why not just
accommodate
work with
the
both
amount of
property
parking we need
owners?
for. That way we don't have to put it on it. If the state will approve that, I don't know if the state will approve it.
We'll state this. Our code requires that we put parking on that site.
Correct.
So whether we get more parking on the neighbors, we still are required to put parking on that site as the code reads today.
Right.
The reason it's never been on there is the community development made a determination, 7, 8 years ago, that we didn't need it on site because it's a multimodal district. The whole point is to encourage walkability. Any city in this nation you go to, you walk to the park. So that was the idea, but it didn't match up with our code. Our code absolutely requires parking on that site. So we either put it on the site, or we can talk about changing the code
Well, and that was brought up too.
to talk about, this is a multimodal district. We are trying to encourage other modes of transportation and not cars. Our comprehensive plan absolutely says that we are to minimize vehicle-pedestrian conflicts.
And I
So-
agree with you, but I did hear council say they want parking down there, and as a property owner down there, I think we need every parking spot we can do too. So trying to eliminate parking on that park, I don't know if that's a good idea. I don't know if we can bring it with the property owners, but we gotta have parking down there.
Is it three, is that,
The-
I've heard it not.
Strictly
or
reading
is-
it,
Strictly reading
out
it.
of the tables, I believe it's 6. Now, when you start getting the reductions for multimodal and all the things that are in the code,
Oh, I
and we
see.
got this determination from the current community development department, that it ends up that we actually need 3 spaces, 2 regular and 1 handicap on that site,
According to
according to our code.
what about the state though? What do they require?
The state doesn't have any requirements for parking on the site, except that it does provide that if you have parking on the site, you have to have a handicap space. But there are no requirements under state law for parking on that current site. Did research on that.
Good. Well,
Another comment here, with this being a multimodal district, the direction that I see, and I see this all the time in council, and when you read, as you do development, the idea is not to put parking on site, for these places, that the multimodal system is ultimately going to override and then provide outsourcing in parking in different areas and less parking, from what I read from this. Is that not true?
That's the objective of the multimodal district, is to encourage other modes of transportation and to encourage walkability. Now, obviously, what we see down there today is lagging. We don't see big walking paths that are lighted. So the actual implementation of our plan is happening very slowly. We're working on an RFP right now for a public-private partnership to come in and build parking garages. The 2 options, one would be at Marler Street and one would be at Zerby. We're currently with the Zerby and Cyber. So we're going to take that. Let me put it this way: I'm working on it right now. It's not complete. The RFP is not complete. I've been in touch with Miami Beach and other cities that have done this before. So trying to get some good examples of some successes.
Yes, ma'am.
May I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am, please. You have to state your name though.
Sorry. Mary Ann Wines. I was answering a question before, but this is my comment on the park. When we're looking at the bathrooms, I thought it was really brilliant the way that they built them into the bluff so that they wouldn't be shown. Most of the best place for the bathrooms is where they are, because you're going to be servicing the boardwalk, which is where the people are that have the open containers, and that's where they need bathrooms. That's where most of the traffic is going to be. 2 things: if you move them up the hill, number 1, they're going to be ugly, unsightly, and block the view. And number 2, it's just going to be used by mostly the homeless people instead of the people that really, it is just not going to be as big of a service. So it would be great if y'all would recommend back to council that they keep those bathrooms where they are instead of pushing them up the hill. Thanks.
Okay,
Mike, I
let's go.
wasn't yelling to be yelling. I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry, sir.
I wasn't speaking loud just to speak loud. I wanted to make sure my voice got on the recorder.
Yes, sir. No, I thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Did Captain Green give a second?
No.
I didn't make a motion yet,
Oh, okay.
but I was gonna make a motion that we recommend that on-site parking be added to the design of the Royal Melbourne Heritage Park. That's my motion.
If you would amend it, I would have put forward. If you would amend it and,
Let's have we'll make a
Let's have a
second.
discussion, got first and second, so we can discuss it now, go ahead.
If you, that's what I was saying either, if you would amend it to ask the property owners on either side to get together with the city and have a discussion about the parking and bring their discussion back to us next month and find out, what they've agreed upon. And that's how we've kind of done things in the past when it's come to the vessels, delivery vessels and the food carts and all of that. I know it takes time, but to me, it's the only fair way to do it. Start with the property owners.
We have a city.
And the city.
Okay, so we have a harbor district that is short on parking to begin with.
I understand that.
Okay, we have a city, the city's engaging to build a parking structure because of that parking shortage. So to me, while I think it's honorable and considerate of the property owners to be a part of it, I don't see where 3 more spots couldn't hurt our situation.
If it's only
So,
three.
I mean, I'll
Good
get
point.
one. What's that, Doc?
No gain, I mean,
No, we need more.
3 spots?
Yeah, we need it.
3 spots?
We need everything we can get.
What are you talking about?
Would be the game.
What are you talking about? There's no gain?
No, I'm just saying, that's not a huge gain, I'm just saying that.
Hey, I'll take little gains.
I'll take one parking spot.
I'll take little gains.
I'm always for being proactive and having
Okay.
property owners talk to each other.
I will amend, can I amend it? I'll go ahead and amend it to, also enter discussions with adjacent property owners for possible solutions.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? All in favor? Okay,
That was unanimous.
Unanimous?
any more discussion on the park? Moving forward. All right, we're moving forward to new business.
Look, hold on,
Yes?
you didn't let me adjust the agenda back at the beginning.
All right, well, come on. I'll tell you, I got your back.
Well, it's
So you make a
probably
motion.
late, but in our minutes, we said very clearly that we would like to have a discussion on the responsibilities of a committee, so that would be B. C, Captain Jones here, asked to give us an update on delivery vessel status. And then the last thing was, we talked about the Harbor CRA plan that we needed to start discussing. Now, I think it's too late personally to discuss that, but that should have been D. B, C, and D should have been on this agenda. And if we don't discuss it tonight, it needs to be carried forward to next month, please. Or it'll be the middle of summer before this happens. You want to know what it is? B, our responsibilities as a committee. C, the status on delivery vessels, and whether they are actually complying or not. And D, the Harbor CRA plan that we are supposed to be very involved in, but as of today, I'm the only one that said anything about it. And it did say that we were gonna get an email copy. I did not get an email copy, although I do have my own plan that you guys need to read, if you haven't gotten it. And Steve said he'd make a copy of it for each one of you.
Actually, I sent out an email to all of you that I had made copies. They sat at the front desk, and I said they'll be sitting up there waiting for you to come pick them up, and that one was picked up. They're still sitting there.
Can they be picked
So
up
you can
tonight?
pick one, you can pick one up on your way out
Well, I
tonight.
apologize for that, Steve, I'm sorry. If you said that, I apologize.
I sent an email to that effect, and they've been sitting up there.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
As far as those other items on the minutes not being on tonight's agenda, I felt like this new item
And-
was gonna be fairly substantial, and that you basically fixed our regular agenda, so.
And I agree with you, 100%. I just don't want them to be left off for next month, because again, it will be the middle of the summer, and we'll still be asking these questions. So, if we could do that, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, let's get back to any new business, Steve.
I don't have any other new business.
Thank you, sir. Project update, sir.
No problem.
Okay, sounds great.
The crane is in place, it's gonna be raining, 4 o'clock.
Exactly. All right, let's go to the committee member comments and questions. Jan?
I've said all I need to say.
Yeah. You good?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody that showed up.
Yes, I really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to seeing the report from, our elected engineer, I don't know.
Jim? Yeah?
All good.
I want to say Happy New Year to everybody and thank you all, and I appreciate your help.